Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time, that fantastic time, that wonderful time of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on in to Fantasy Daily, December 4th, 2021. We are getting ready for Sunday, week 13. This is the game breakdown show for Saturdays, the big show, the most important, the one that we really need to get to and get through. So everybody, thank you for joining me. I am Nathan. Check out the links below, TikTok, blah, 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 subscribe, all that good stuff. We got a lot to cover. We got a lot. It's week 13. We're on the cusp of playoffs. We got a lot of implications here. A lot of things that we need to be worried about. A lot of players that we need to talk about. So let us get right into it. We got the Thursday night review. We got some news. And actually, I did take the news and I dissolved it down into the game breakdown. So I'll talk about them as I go instead of one section of news. But we got the Thursday night review, game breakdowns, and then I got some daily fantasy plays for you for your FanDuel, DraftKings, over-unders, blah, 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 whatever it may be. So let us talk about the takeaways from Thursday night football. Now, obviously, Taysom Hill, good play. Okay, he had the interceptions, all good. Taysom Hill does have mallet finger, though. We saw that one pass where he was trying to go forward, smashed his finger on the defender's arm. So him having mallet finger does require surgery, could be an off-season thing, but now we have to monitor it day through day because it could be Trevor Siemian getting the start next week. So while Taysom Hill does look like a good quarterback starter or streamer throughout the rest of the season, we really need to wait and see what happens over there to see if he's going to be the starter moving forward. Zeke. This is kind of what we thought it was going to be. A lot of people that I was asking on TikTok, they were asking me Zeke, Pollard, blah, 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 blah. And I was saying play a lot of people over Zeke. I was saying play Pollard over Zeke, and it's sad to say, but this seems to be a trend with the team now. Even Pollard. Pollard had just the one run where if it wasn't for that one run to the end zone, he would have been just as bad. So when it comes to this team, it really does look like Pollard's going to be a 1A, 1B on this team. So you really do have to temper your expectations on what Zeke is going to be for the rest of the year. Pollard's not going away. Me personally, I think best case scenario for anybody who has Zeke, hope that he gets a week to rest because that's really what he needs. They're far past their bye, so he's got a long way to go for, playoffs and all that good stuff. He needs to probably sit a game. And if I was the Zeke manager, I'd be hoping that he at least sits a game. This was a good week for him to sit. Having him active for this game really didn't make sense. But Zeke is not looking great. It was a brutal matchup. Pollard wasn't much without the touchdown. But they really do need to sit him. So you got to temper your expectations on what Zeke is going to be for the rest of the year. Hopefully you got some wide receivers or a tight end like Kelsey or something that you have high upside to go with somebody like Zeke who may actually hurt you on a week-to-week basis. CeeDee Lamb, like we've been saying, he is the stud on this team. He is clearly the best player on this team. Amari Cooper was limited. We saw that. If you guys got my TikTok right before the game, we got the update that he wasn't even practicing in independent drills and limited drills and stuff like that. So him not, participating in that at all says if they want to limit him pregame, they're going to limit him in game. So he had that one catch that kind of gave you a little bit of hope for the week. But without that one catch, it was going to be a super brutal game for you. Ingram, it was a bad game for Ingram. He got the carries. They had Montgomery in there quite a bit as well. But this is likely the last week that you can start Ingram. Kamara should be back. So don't drop Ingram, hang on to him, but do kind of realize that might have been the end of it for Mark Ingram as far as value and if you can play him going forward. So I do expect Alvin Kamara to be back very soon and next week. And with that, we have a ton of games to get through, so let us get right into the game breakdowns. All right, we got Tampa Bay, we got Atlanta, Antonio Brown, the news that we talked about a little bit on the Thursday show, but Tampa Bay at Atlanta, Antonio Brown is suspended for 3 weeks. Now, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I did post a little blurb there about this Antonio Brown suspension that I want to cover real quick because we knew that Antonio Brown was being kind of strung along every single week, and they weren't placing him on IR, which was odd because I think he missed like 5 weeks it was. So if you can put him on IR, you free up a roster spot, you get 3 weeks that he's on IR, then you can take him off. So it was odd that they did not do that with Antonio Brown, but that was among the speculation that he did commit this, COVID offense. And he's going to be suspended for 3 weeks now. So it's almost funny, like, did Tampa Bay know everything that happened and they were like, yeah, you're getting suspended for sure? So they purposely did not put him on IR. Because if they were to put him on IR and he had to serve 3 weeks, and say, for example, he was at week 2 now and then he gets the 3-game suspension, you don't serve your suspension until after you come off of IR, when you're eligible to play. It's 3 weeks of eligibility. So they kind of played a game there and won out with not putting AB on IR, because looks like they knew. Like, they knew he was going to get suspended, so not placing him there. He's out for 3 weeks, but we talked about it last week. I do think that Antonio Brown is a roster block. You really don't want to play him week 16. He's got a good matchup week 17 in the championship. But I'm not really going to hold on to Antonio Brown for that hope. He should be back in full capacity when he does come back, but the bad matchup week 16 and week 17 is a good matchup. I'm not going to wait to see if he's going to be there for my championship match, because you likely already have moved on. You likely have already found wide receiver help, and if you're really desperate at wide receiver, there's a bunch of other names in here that you could definitely play in over Antonio Brown. So if Antonio Brown is blocking your roster, if you have somebody that's on IR or IR eligible and Antonio Brown is blocking up that spot, I do think that he's worth the drop. So that's it for AB. We already talked about that a little bit, but I just wanted to reiterate that. Moving on to the matchup implications. Tampa Bay at Atlanta, and it's really hard for me to sit anybody on Tampa Bay right now. Tom Brady, Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronk, Tampa Bay's defense against Atlanta. Everybody should be started in this matchup. If you have a Tampa Bay player, you start him. So that's an easy one to cover. Atlanta side of the ball, Matt Ryan, I do think, is a streamer in this game. We've seen that Tampa Bay is vulnerable in some matchups. This is a division game where Atlanta usually gets trampled, and I do expect Tampa Bay to trample them. But I do think that Matt Ryan could be a streamer in this game. I'm worried about interceptions and such like that, but I do think that he's going to need to work in this one, and I'm hoping that this is a Kyle Pitts game. I really do want to start Kyle Pitts in this one. I'm hoping it's a Kyle Pitts game. Mike Davis is a no. Cordarrelle Patterson is in, absolutely. Russell Gage, I do feel like is a sneaky start because, like I said, this Tampa Bay defense has shown that they're vulnerable. I do think this is a good week for Russell Gage. And if Matt Ryan can keep it together and not throw picks and not look like an absolute mess, then they should have value here. Now, I'm not saying that Atlanta's going to compete, but I'm saying as far as fantasy value goes, I do think that Matt Ryan could be a streamer without sinking you. Russell Gage could be a sneaky start, a low-end sneaky start. And then Cordarrelle and Kyle Pitts, you're obviously starting. Moving on, we got Arizona at Chicago. Now, the big story here right now is really what's going to happen with Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. That's what a lot of people are asking, and you really do need to prepare like you have been preparing as if they're going to be out, because these are game time decisions. Game time decisions at 1 o'clock give you a lot of flexibility, so obviously you have the 4 o'clock games, the 8 o'clock games, the Monday night games to use as flexibility, but I do think that you should always be prepared. When anything's a game time decision, you should be prepared for the pivot. So if you don't have those pivots ready, hopefully later on in the show or as the show progresses, I say a couple names that stick out to you, or maybe you're able to get, or maybe you have on your bench that you can have confidence in. But if they're playing, they're playing. I'm putting them in my lineup. If Kyler and Nook are active, then I'm playing both of them, but definitely be ready for a pivot if you need to. Chase Edmonds is still out, so you're firing up James Conner. Keep him rolling as long as Chase Edmonds out, and even when he gets back, the schedule doesn't look great, but you're still probably going to keep firing up James Conner as a running back 2 with running back 1 upside. Rondelle Moore, this is somebody that I've gotten a lot of questions about this week. He was very effective last week, so people are wondering if that's going to translate into the Chicago game. Rondelle Moore did this without Kyler Murray, so it's hard for me to gauge on that exactly what's going to happen. And I do still feel like the A.J. Green, Rondelle Moore, Christian Kirk lottery is very much still active, where it could be any one of them any given week. So for me personally, I really would like to avoid these guys if I can. If I did have to take a shot on one of them, I guess it would be Rondelle Moore. Moore, but AJ Green is a close second for me. So it's tough for me to want to trust either one of these guys in the matchup going forward. So like I said, a lot of wide receiver names that we're going to talk about today, a lot of running back names that we're going to talk about today as well. So those kind of lottery backfields and lottery wide receiver cores, I'm really not going to try to dive into. It's really DeAndre Hopkins or nothing for me. And if I have to reach, it's going to be Rondelle Moore. If AJ Green's there and I'm desperate, I guess I'll play him. But I'd rather pivot to somebody else. Zack Ernst, I think he's a great start in here, regardless of who the quarterback is going to be. Chicago's allowing a lot of points to the tight end position, so I think that Zack Ernst could have a safe floor in this one and maybe catch 4 passes, possibly a touchdown. And Arizona defense, fire up that Arizona defense against Chicago for sure. We got Andy Dalton. He's likely to get the start, or he is going to get the start. He's been named the starter, but he's going to be on your bench. We're not starting him against Arizona. It's really hard for me to trust David Montgomery in this game as well. I got a lot of David Montgomery questions this week, and I told a lot of people that I'd rather start Tony Pollard over David Montgomery. So thank God for that Tony Pollard touchdown. If you were one of those people who I told to start Pollard over Montgomery, and you did. But I really do think that Montgomery is one of those players that I want to pivot on. If I have a different option this week, then I definitely want to play them. If I have a Jamal Williams, and Alexander Madison, I'm trying to think of just some lower end guys that were talked about a lot this week. Pollard was in there. We'll probably go for it. I'll keep Montgomery in the back of my head while we're talking about running backs, but it's hard for me to trust him. There's a lot of pivot options out there that I'd rather go to this week for sure. Darnell Mooney, he is one of my favorite wide receivers this week. I believe he was one of my starts of the week. I love Darnell Mooney in this game. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. He's going to have to be Mr. Necessity in this game. He's shown that he can do it. Andy Dalton has shown that he wants, to use Darnell Mooney. So I really do like Darnell Mooney a lot in this game. I think he's an absolute fire-up wide receiver one, and I even went as far as saying that he's going to be top 5 this week. So we'll talk about him a little bit. Actually, no, I lied. Darnell Mooney should be within the top 10, but has top 5 potential this week. So I don't want to spoil the show. I'm saying too much. I be saying too much because I get excited about these players. But Darnell Mooney should be a top 10 player this week. I think he gets peppered with targets. I wouldn't be surprised if he sees the Keenan Allen amount of targets. And if he gets in the end zone, he's going to be a top tier wide receiver. So Darnell Mooney, I believe, absolutely has to be in your lineups this weekend. And on top of that, Marquise Goodwin is going to be out. Allen Robinson's doubtful. So the wide receiver core is completely depleted over there. Cole Kmet practicing this week, but I don't like the chance for Jimmy G stealing, so I really don't trust either one of those tight ends. I really don't want to start either one of them unless I absolutely have to, which I guess I'll lean Cole Kmet, but at the same exact time, there's a million other tight ends I'd rather play. I'd rather play CJ Uzama than Cole Kmet. Because, like I said, Jimmy G can steal at any given time. So, love Mooney in this one. Robinson's out. Robinson's likely out. Goodwin is already out. Chargers at Cincinnati. Justin Herbert is going to be working in this one. So, I really like Justin Herbert as a start. I got a lot of pivot questions this week where do I start Justin Herbert or Carson Wentz, stuff like that. I love Carson Wentz, spoiler alert, but Justin Herbert, I think, is going to be working a lot in this one, so I really do want to start him. Austin Eckler, no-brainer. He's in. Keenan Allen, no-brainer. Should be getting peppered with targets. Mike Williams, big name that we keep getting a lot. He's a lot of, do I start this guy or this guy questions. So Mike Williams, he is worth the start. I think Herbert is going to need him, so I think that Mike Williams should definitely be safe floor in this one with a high upside as well. Hopefully we get to see the Mike Williams of, beginning of the season in this game. Avoid the tight ends. It's always a, toss-up over there, so I really don't want to play either 3 of them. Jared Cook, blah, 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 the whole brigade. I don't want to play any of those guys. Cincinnati side of the ball, Joe Burrow, definitely a start in this one. I really like both of these quarterback plays in this matchup. I really think this is going to be a high-scoring game. It's going to be a lot of fun. But also Joe Mixon. I'm staking my claim that Joe Mixon is going to absolutely pop off in this game. I think he's going to be, top 5 running back this week. So if you have Joe Mixon, be pumped. I think he has a huge game coming his way. Jamar Chase, he is in. T. Higgins, definitely worth a flex in this game. I think they're going to be working a lot. So I think if T. Higgins is out there on your bench and you're looking at, different players to play, T. Higgins is definitely, high up on that list for me. Tyler Boyd, the matchup looks like it's there, like he's going to be integrated, but I really do think that the offense is more T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon based right now, and Tyler Boyd's taking a firm backseat. So it's tough for me to trust Tyler Boyd. There's a lot of other players that I'd rather play besides Tyler Boyd. CJ Uzama, we just talked about him in the previous game where I said I'd like to start him over whoever the hell we were just talking about. Cole Kmet. But he's an interesting stream in this game. I do like him. He's kind of a deeper reach. Like if you're really desperate, you have nothing else. If you missed the waiver wire when you had Darren Waller and you're really staring at whoever's out there, Logan Thomas is gone, Foster Moreau's gone, whatever. CJ Uzama, I think you can play in this game. Minnesota at Detroit. We're moving right along. This is good. Alexander Madison, he is an absolute league winner. If you heard me talk about Dalvin Cook throughout the week on TikTok, anywhere that you guys join me. By the way, guys, I go on TikTok Live twice this weekend. I'll be on there TikTok Live tonight, and I'll be on TikTok Live tomorrow morning to answer those start-sit questions for you. So check me out there. If you haven't already followed me, check me out. The links are in the description. Hit the subscribe button, all that good blah, blah, blah stuff. Alexander Madison. Already talked about him. He's a league winner. If you heard me talk about Cook, I really don't know when he'll be back, and I really think that when they say he's going to be back for the playoffs, they don't mean your fantasy playoffs. They mean the NFL playoffs, which begin in January, which is far past when your fantasy league is over. Or it's a couple weeks removed from when your fantasy championships happen. So I really don't know if Cook is going to be back for this season. So if you got Alexander Madison, you likely got a running back one for the rest of the year. So be pumped. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, no-brainers. They're both in this game, and I think they're going to both continue to be solid for the rest of the season. I love their schedule. We talked about them on the playoff winners earlier in the week, and I think they're both going to continue to be studs for the rest of the season. Tyler Conklin could be a sneaky streamer in this one, and I do like Kirk Cousins as a solid streamer number one. Minnesota defense as well. You can start them if they're out there. Go ahead and grab them. Hopefully you grab them through the waiver. They're playing Detroit. Detroit's awful. They lost their best player, so Minnesota should be a great defense to start this week. Other side of the ball, Jared Goff, you are not starting. Really, the only startable assets in this game are Jamal Williams and TJ Hawkinson. Jamal Williams, to me, is locked in as a running back 2 with one upside, depending on how many times he catches that ball. But I think he's going to slide right into the Swift role with success. So I do believe that Jamal Williams is locked and loaded as a start this week. But with that being said, and while we're here, while we got a minute, while we're steamrolling along through these games, getting really good progress, I want to mention, before it happens, and in case you're in a dynasty league, in case you're in a deep league, and in case you're ruined at running back and you're playing Rex Burkhead and Mark Ingram, which I know some people are, I really do think that you should go look at Jamar Jefferson. Because if DeAndre Swift misses extended time, now they're expecting or they're hoping optimistically that DeAndre Swift is back week 16 and 17, around there. But I do think that we need to look at Jamar Jefferson. I do believe that he gets snaps this week. He gets carries this week. I don't think he eats into Jamal Williams too much. But Jamar Jefferson was high capital draft pick. He doesn't suck. He's pretty good. I do think that you're going to see him a little bit in this game, and you might see him for the next couple of weeks. So if you have Jamal Williams, you're firing him up as a running back too. But you're going to see some Jamar Jefferson on that field. And I think that if you're desperate at running back, Jamar Jefferson might be worth a stash down there. Moving on, Indy at Houston. Carson Wentz is an absolute start here. I know I gave him some shade last week. He said, absolutely not, Fantasy Daily. Don't you be talking about me like that. Carson Wentz came through in the game, and I think in this game, especially at Houston, he's going to be a solid streamer. Could be even top 10 quarterback at the end of the week. Should be. Pittman, I think this is a bounce-back week for him against Houston, so if you've been riding the Pittman train and you're a little bit bummed out from the last few weeks, I understand, but this should be a bounce-back game for him. Jonathan Taylor, yeah, he's pretty good at football. Zach Pascal, Chester Rogers, they are really the toss-up there, and that's another one where it's another lottery that I really don't want to buy into. I would much rather grab something more solid. I would much rather play a Van Jefferson. I know we talked about, who did we talk about a couple spots ago? T. Higgins. I'd rather play a D. Higgins for sure. Obviously, T. Higgins is probably not in that conversation, but I'd definitely be looking to pivot. Van Jefferson, Zach Pascal and Chester Rogers here to me are very, very scary, and I don't want to trust either one of them, even in the good matchup. Jack Doyle, he seems to be the tight end one for Carson Wentz. Mo Alley-Cox taking a back seat, unfortunately, even though I love Mo Alley-Cox. Jack Doyle is definitely worth the stream because he seems to be the tight end that Carson Wentz likes to go to, and we know that Carson Wentz does like tight ends, especially in the red zone. Oh, a spit a lil. Y'all seen that on the YouTube. Anyway, Houston. Oh, man, the cough's the quick. I can't even take a sip, man. This is why I need a co-host sometimes so I can just have a moment for myself. Oh, man. All right, here we go. Reset. Talking about Houston. Unfortunately, we're talking about Houston. All right, so Houston is like all season, basically the same exact thing over and over again, where you really can't trust anybody except Tyrod Taylor depending on matchup, which Tyrod Taylor in this one, I really don't care for. There's a lot of other streamers this week that I think are good and disguised under a bad matchup, as we've been talking about. But I do think that Tyrod Taylor is one there that I really would want to avoid. So for me in this matchup, it's really only Brandon Cooks, and he's going to rely on targets and hopefully a touchdown in this one. David Johnson, he is questionable with an illness, but I'm already out. I don't want to play David Johnson. I don't want to play Rex Burkhead in this matchup. So even with the illness, the questionability, you might be looking at Rex Burkhead going, oh, he gets the bulk of the work. I don't want either one. The tight end group, too many mouths to feed for me to trust. I don't want any part of it. So for Houston, it's really Brandon Cooks or bust. And even Brandon Cooks has been looking pretty, hit or miss lately. He's looking like he's on the Marvin Jones line right now. All right. New York Giants at Miami. Daniel Jones is out, so Mike Glennon is going to get the start. So start your Miami defenses. Kenny Golladay, he seems to be the only wide receiver that's healthy right now. Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney are out in this one. So you're going to have Slayton and Golladay. I do think that Golladay could be a good streamer. I know he's on a lot of waiver wires, so if you're really hurting at wide receiver, I think Kenny Golladay is worth a start. He could get peppered with targets by Mike Glennon. And I hope that that same logic goes for Saquon Barkley. I think that Saquon Barkley is worth the start in this one. He's really running back 2-esque. But hopefully Glennon gets him with those receptions. We really need those dump-offs to Saquon to really make him that running back one that he's always been. Without those dump-offs, without those catches, he's not going to be the Saquon Barkley that you really want and the one that you drafted. So Saquon Barkley, hopefully he gets them in this game, returns to that running back one form, but you should really be looking at him as a running back two. Evan Ingram, I don't trust. We talk about this all the time, and with the quarterback uncertainty, I definitely do not trust Evan Ingram. This whole team looks pretty bleak in this matchup. Kenny Golladay is a risk. He's a super risk, but I know that receptions alone, he could get peppered in this one. So a lot of bad wide receivers out there. I think you could do worse than Kenny Golladay. On the other side of the ball, Miami, a team that we've been rising on for a few weeks. We've been talking about Jalen Waddle for a while, how he's a super stud, how Myles Gaskin is low-key getting it done. Tua, he's worth the start. Jalen Waddle, he's in. Myles Gaskin, he's in. Those are all must-start players to me. Phillip Lindsay is doubtful, so that bumps up the Myles Gaskin. Hopefully he retains that value. Even when Phillip Lindsay comes back, because I do think that Myles Gaskin with this team is better. The way they play with Myles Gaskin, Tua clearly trusts him. It's definitely a better team when they're running the ball with Gaskin. Devonte Parker is sitting. Devonte Parker is going to sit this one, so it's really only Jalen Waddle for me. Mike Gesicki should be a streamer in this one, but I really don't trust it. There's a lot. I'd rather play CJ Uzama, but the fact that Adam Shaheen is doubtful makes me look at Mike G a little bit more. But it's tough for me because it's constantly a toss-up at that tight end position. It's inconsistent. So for me, Mike G is a lower end streamer. I'd rather play Logan Thomas. I'd rather play CJ Uzama. I'd rather play more of a high-scoring matchup where I can count on targets. Miami's defense, like we said, fire him up against Daniel Jones. All right, moving on. Philadelphia at the Giants. Jalen Hurts, the big question in this game, and he is heavy pivot right now. Well, not heavy pivot, heavy questionable. So you've got to be looking for your pivot. I grabbed Derek Carr this week. He's playing Washington. He gets Kansas City next week when Jalen Hurts is on the bye. So if you're like me and you have Jalen Hurts in just about every league, I think Derek Carr is the best pivot. But make sure that you're going out there and looking for those pivots because you might need them. Carson Wentz, if he's still out there, go ahead and grab him, put him on your bench because if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, you're going to need something. So looking at that, you're going to have your pivot ready. He's looking like a true game time decision. So we want Hurts to play, but if he doesn't, you got to be prepared. Jordan Howard is out. Miles Sanders is expected to play. Boston Scott has missed the majority of the week with an illness. So it's probably going to be a Sanders and Boston Scott show. I expect Boston Scott to play if he beats the illness by tomorrow. I'm still waiting for the updates today. But with all of that, I think that this is kind of a backfield to avoid. The matchup looks great, but I really can't trust either one. If Boston Scott and Jordan Howard are both inactive, then I want to fire up Miles Sanders. I really, really like Miles Sanders in this game if that's the case. Even if especially if Gardner Minshew gets the start behind Jalen Hurts. But I do think that if both of them are active, Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, you're going to see a lot of rotation there, so it's hard to trust either one of them. I think that if you're desperate, you start both of them. Not if you have both of them, but if you have, respectively, I think that they could both offer a safe floor against this awful running back team. But if you have better options, if there's better options out there, you pivot. This is desperation play for me. And if, both of them are out, Sanders the only one that's active, then you definitely start Sanders. So it's a tough situation. It really depends on injury. The matchup looks great, but I am still pretty worried. Devonte Smith looks to start. Get him in your lineup. Love him this week. Dallas Goedert as well. Get him in your lineup. The Eagles defense against the Giants, that's a good start as well. And I'm not going to touch the other wide receivers like Qued Watkins or Jalen Reagor. It's just too volatile. I really don't want to jump into that. Philly. The Jets. We're going to be talking about Zach Wilson getting the start. I got the hiccups now. Zach Wilson getting the start in this one. So, we saw him kind of hurt Elijah Moore's value last week. We were sad about it, but I do think that he's in for more work this week. He should be a bounce-back game from him. So I'm starting Elijah Moore, obviously not starting Zach Wilson. Tevin Coleman, he got the bulk of the work last week. He could be a good streamer in this one. This team clearly misses Michael Carter. They're going to want to get somebody into that role, and it looks to be Tevin Coleman, so I do think that he is worth a stream this week if you're desperate. Jamison Crowder, he can be looked at in deep leagues, but there's a lot of players I'd start over him, like how we've been talking about throughout the show. My big takeaway from the Philly game and Jets game, and we're going to be talking about it on the Daily Fantasy, so actually, you know what, I'll save that for the DFS part of the show, but Ryan Griffin, I do think, is a super sneaky start in this matchup against the Eagles, and we'll talk about that soon. Washington at Las Vegas, the first 4 o'clock game, the 4:05 game. And if you guys are listening on Spotify or any of the streaming podcast listening devices thingies, I got 4 minutes left. I'm going to try to charge through these games, but you'll likely get cut off. So if you're a Spotify listener, like I always say, check me out on YouTube. That's really the best place to watch the entire show, listen to the entire show. But moving on. Washington at Las Vegas. J.D. McKissick is already out for this game, so Antonio Gibson is a fire-up running back one. I absolutely love him this week in this matchup. Logan Thomas removed from injury report, which is a much-needed reinforcement they need to keep on the field, so Logan Thomas is back. Fire him up at your tight end position. Terry McLaurin, you're playing him. Curtis Samuel is still questionable, so we're not going to be putting him into lineups. We're not going to trust any of the wide receivers outside of Terry McLaurin and the tight end Logan Thomas. Heineke, he's a deep reach stream, but I'd rather not. Vegas, Darren Waller is doubtful. Foster Moreau is a perfect pivot for Darren Waller if you need it. We've seen that Darren Waller, when he was out, they used Foster Moreau. Derek Carr doesn't mind going to him. Derek Carr, he is a great start. He is my number one QB stream of the week. He's in my top 5 QBs of the week because he's playing against Washington, which is absolutely garbo against quarterbacks, and they are exceptionally garbo compared to everybody else against quarterbacks. Josh Jacobs, he is a good start, although be wary. And when I say be wary, I mean he's in your lineup, but you might want to be looking at other players and hoping that you have a Keenan Allen, Travis Kelce, a Tyreek Hill to hopefully bump you up for the week and have some high upside. So Jacobs is definitely worth the start, but definitely be wary. And hopefully, if you have a better pivot than Josh Jacobs, then you go Josh Jacobs. Hunter Renfro, you fire him up. I think that Hunter Renfro is going to be an absolute stud this week. We'll talk about that soon. Foster Moreau, like I said, he's a good pivot for Waller. He should be involved. Bryan Edwards, Zay Jones, they're still a toss-up to me. They should be involved, but it is that lottery that I definitely would like to avoid. Jacksonville at the Rams. We got T-Law. He is on your waivers. He's not in your lineup. He stays on your waivers. J-Rob, he is still questionable, but he is one of my favorite starts of the week, so I do expect him to play, and he slides right into your lineup. You get him going. Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, I do think they both have a safe floor in this game with some upside. So I do think that if you're desperate at wide receiver, if you're looking to somebody to just not kill your team, I think Marvin Jones and Laviska are both those players where they should offer you at least a safe floor for the matchup with a little bit of upside. Dan Arnold has been moved to IR, so that opens up the James O'Shaughnessy door, and he's more of a daily fantasy play than an actual, redraft league play. I really don't want to look at James O'Shaughnessy. I'm sure you can get CJ Uzama or Jack Doyle before you have to play James O'Shaughnessy. And it's really hard to trust anybody outside of J-Rob and, Marvin Jones, really. Like, even Laviska's kind of a reach. Moving on. Moving on to the Rams side of the ball, that is. Rams, they're playing against Jacksonville at home. OBJ is expected to play, and this is the big news. You guys are going to hear me talk about Odell Beckham a lot throughout the year, throughout history of fantasy football. You know I'm not a fan of Odell Beckham. I'm not going to put him on my team. I'm not going to take that chance. I'm firing up Van Jefferson over Odell Beckham. I'm playing Van Jefferson in any league that I have him this week. I really like him in this matchup, and like I said last week, anything that you hear the team talk about for Odell Beckham, I think it applies to Van Jefferson more than it does Odell Beckham. So if you think, oh, we're finally going to get him involved, no, it's going to be Van Jefferson. And look at last week, it basically was. So Van Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, love them both, get them both in there. Tyler Higbee, he's a low-end streamer in this one as well. I'd rather play him over like CJ Uzama. I'd rather play Jack Doyle over Tyler Higbee, but he is in that conversation. Darrell Henderson, not looking good to play. He seems to be the big story in this game, or he is the big story in this game. So, Michelle, if Darrell Henderson sits, Michelle's a low-end running back too. If Darrell Henderson plays, I think it kills both of them. So, you're obviously going to start Darrell Henderson if he's active. But if you have Michelle and you're hoping to play him, and Darrell Henderson is active, I think I would still sit Michelle. I don't trust that at all. Matt Stafford, obviously, great play in this one against Jacksonville. You're firing him up, and the Rams' defense is an amazing play in this matchup. Moving on, Baltimore at Pittsburgh. Lamar, he had 4 interceptions last week versus Cleveland in that division game. I do expect a bounce-back game from Lamar. I think he's going to feast out in this one against Pittsburgh, so you're firing him up with no concerns. Marquis Brown is back. Let's go. Marquis Brown, he's back in your lineup. Let's go. Put him back in your lineup. Get him going. Rashad Bateman, good start this week. I'm getting him in there. I like Rashad Bateman a lot. He's one of my higher streamers this week. One of the players that I, kind of put. I think I have Rashad Bateman 1 or 2 spots below Van Jefferson this week. So I really, really like Rashad Bateman. He's in that category with Brandon Ayuk and all that good stuff. I'm not trusting any of the running backs here. Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman. You hear me talk about Baltimore backfield a lot. I really don't care for these backs, and I really don't want to start either one of them. Mark Andrews, yeah, he's a pretty good tight end. You fire him up. Big Ben, he's on the waiver wire. You're not starting him. Najee, you're absolutely starting. Deontay Johnson, you're absolutely starting. Pat Freiermuth, I talked about him on my the Starts of the Week show. I love him. He's still in concussion protocol, but he's expected to play. He's looking good. Fire him up. Baltimore's letting up a ton of points to tight end. Claypool is a risky start. I would rather play other options like Darnell Mooney, Rashad Bateman, Van Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk. I'd rather play a lot of other players besides Chase Claypool, but I do think that he could be played if you're really desperate and there's nothing out there and he's on your roster already and you've been kind of waiting. All right, San Francisco at Seattle. Sorry, sip time. This is a hard show. This is a show that I'm trying to troop through. There's a lot of information that I've been condensed in the last couple of days that I'm trying to fire out in an organized and helpful manner to help you guys get these W's for Week 13 to get into those playoffs Week 15, 16, and 17 and take home one of these bad Larrys. Not a TV, a trophy. San Francisco at Seattle. We got Jimmy G. He's going to be on your bench. We're not starting him. I do like the matchup. There's a lot of other quarterbacks out there, and that's why Jimmy G's on my bench. If any of the quarterbacks that I've been saying that I like are not available, that's when you start Jimmy G. But basically every other quarterback that I've talked about is mostly available, so that's why I said Jimmy G no, but he's basically at the bottom end of my streamers as far as streamers that I don't hate putting in my lineup. Elijah Mitchell, he is a must start. I absolutely love Elijah Mitchell. If Jeff Wilson is out on your waiver wires and you have free space, you need to put Jeff Wilson on your bench as well because their schedule is absolutely delightful. Brandon Ayuk, you're playing him, but I am not as high on everybody else as Brandon Ayuk is. I do think that he's going to pull the wide receiver 1 coverage, and Deebo Samuel missing time is going to be more beneficial for Elijah Mitchell and George Kittle than it is going to be Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk maybe even loses some value here, doesn't gain that. And everybody, around the community is really, really high on Brandon Ayuk this week, but I'm not in that community. I'm in the fantasy community, I'd like to think. But I'm not in the community of thinking that Brandon Ayuk is now an absolute must-start wide receiver 1, because even when I'm sorry, you don't go from the beginning of the year being an absolute maybe be on the lineup, maybe be in the starting lineup, to now you're a wide receiver 1. He might have good games, but I don't know, man. I'm looking more at George Kittle, and I know one of these other wide receivers in this game is going to have a good game. Juwan Jennings is one that I'm going to lean on. We're going to talk about him soon. I really think that Juwan Jennings being in that wide receiver 2 role could benefit a lot more than Brandon Ayuk, being in the 1 role. And when I say benefit more, I mean you're going to see more improvement from Juwan Jennings now, from before to now, than you are Brandon Ayuk from before to now. You know what I mean? I feel like Brandon Ayuk's best games might be behind him. Those 20-point games I feel are really his ceiling. So I don't think that he ends up starting to become a Deebo Samuel target absorber all of a sudden. So I'm not in the camp of Brandon Ayuk. I think he's a great start this week. I definitely want to get him in my lineups if I have him, but I'm tempering my expectations as far as feeling like, a lot of people are saying, start Brandon Ayuk over Marquis Brown is one of them that I got. Absolutely not. In no world would I start Brandon Ayuk over Marquis Brown. No way. So that's what I mean by tempering my expectations. I'm still getting him in my lineup, but it really depends on over who. I'm not benching, Hunter Renfro for Brandon Ayuk. There's no way. Seattle side of the ball. Adrian Peterson has been signed and activated off of the practice squad. Alex Collins is still questionable. I'm not touching any running backs in Seattle. I'm all set with both of them, all 3 of them, all 4 of them, all 8 of them, whatever it may be. I'm not touching it. Russell Wilson, it's been scary. It's been nerve-wracking, but I think he is down there, with the Jimmy G's as far as, streamers that you can consider this week. If you've been running with Russell Wilson all year, hopefully you found a pivot. I would rather play Derek Carr. I'd rather play Carson Wentz. I'd rather play Joe Burrow. So there's a lot of other options that I'd rather play besides Russell Wilson. But if you have him down there, you just kind of ride the wave with him. You know what I mean? DK Metcalf, that has been another one that has been absolutely scary. You likely don't have a better option for him, and you're going to have to put him in. But if I have some great options that I'm staring at on my bench and going, oh, man, I don't know what I should do with this, I'm probably going to bench DK. And like the aforementioned Brandon Ayuk, I would play Brandon Ayuk over DK this week. Lockett, he's different though. I do think that Lockett is going to start coming back to that form where he gets at least 5-6 targets a game from Russell Wilson. So hopefully we see that trend continue, and I do think that Russell Wilson is going to have to lean on him a lot more. And we've seen that Lockett is Russell Wilson's security blanket. So if security blanket is needed when you're playing bad, it kind of spells Tyler Lockett to me. So I really do like Tyler Lockett rest of season a lot more than I have in the past. So if you have Tyler Lockett, I think you can start him up and expect a little bit more than what you've been expecting. And really no tight ends there can be trusted. I'm not trusting any tight end in Seattle at all. Don't care about one week to another. Not willing to take that chance. Denver at Kansas City, the Sunday night football game, and one of the biggest stories of the week for me is that Melvin Gordon is doubtful. So I made the mistake of playing Mark Ingram and Tony Pollard this week. Now I have Joe Mixon in my flex spot, and I can't put Javonte in my lineup. So now I have Javonte on my bench. Melvin Gordon is doubtful, and Javonte is likely to get his first start as the running back 1, and I think he's an absolute must start. He should finish top 15 at running back this week. I love Devonte Williams in this game. I cannot say enough good things about him. It's time. It's time to watch Javonte pop, and we are so excited for it to happen. Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy in this matchup, very, 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 very scary. Very, very scary. I really would rather pivot somewhere else if I have either one of these guys. I'm sure you have pivots. I'm sure these guys have been flex spots and bench riders for you for a little bit. So very scared of them in this matchup. Same thing with Noah Fant, a low-end streamer. The only player I want to play in this game is Devonte Williams. I don't want to play Teddy. I don't want to play the wide receivers. I don't want to play Noah Fant. I know Noah Fant looks like a good option in this one, but it's a super scary, super risky situation. Hard to bet on it, and I'm really out on as far as both of them goes. About everybody actually except for Javonte. Love Javonte. Kansas City side of the ball. CEH is questionable but expected to play. If he plays, you put him in the lineup. He's worth a flex running back 2 slot. Darrell Williams is worth a flex if Clyde Edwards-Helaire misses time. You're playing Mahomes. You're playing Hill. You're playing Kelsey. And I think that McCole Hardman might be a sneaky start in this one as well. So he's more of a lower end guy, daily fantasy play, but I do think that he could be a sneaky start. New England at Buffalo, the Monday night football matchup. We got Mack Jones Excuse me, these hiccups, I'm talking too fast. Mack Jones likely on the bench, he's good. He's likely on your bench. I'm keeping him on the waiver wire. He looks really good so far, but not for fantasy. I'm not trusting that. I think it could be a lot of Damian Harris in this game. So with that, Damian Harris can be started. Ramondre Stevenson, I think, is also a super risky play in this one, and for that reason, because they're playing Buffalo, Buffalo is susceptible at the running back position more so than it looks like. But I do think that Buffalo is going to need to work in this game. So Ramondre Stevenson is going to have some backseat work. You're going to see more Damian Harris. And I think that Buffalo is going to be able to put up points on New England more so than more teams have in the past few weeks, especially for the month of November against New England. New England's allowing a brutal low amount of points scored against them. So New England's clearly the number one defense right now as far as point totals. And Buffalo, I think, should be able to get some points up on them, even with that, even with them looking a little bit lower this week. They're at, lately they're at home. So I expect Buffalo to put some points on the board. Damian Harris can be started. Ramondre Stevenson to kind of take a back seat. Kendrick Bourne. I've talked about him a lot as a Patriots fan on the show, as, just talking about who I wished would be getting starts on the team. Kendrick Bourne looks to be the wide receiver Mack Jones leans on. Although the wide receiver core is worrying, I do think that he is kind of the safest bet. So if you want to lean on one of them, I think it's Kendrick Bourne, and it's nice to see that he's kind of getting that, that work. I loved Kendrick Bourne when he was in San Francisco. During the offseason, the only two additions that I were really stoked about was Juwan and Kendrick Bourne. So nice to see both of them, on the team finally starting to, fill into their own. So hopefully that keeps up. Hunter Henry, he's worth a start here. I still have him over Jonnu. Jonnu will vulture some weeks like he did last week, but I do expect Hunter Henry to continue being the tight end one on this team, and I think he's a streamer as well. Zach Moss, he was a healthy scratch last week on the Buffalo side of the bill. He's out. You're bringing him to the wire, and I'm not trusting Matt Breida or Devin Singletary. A lot of people this week were asking me questions about Matt Breida. I wouldn't even have picked him up on the waiver wire. He wasn't on my waiver show for a reason. I don't look at Matt Breida like that. I don't look at that team like that. I don't think it was a player thing. I don't think it was a Zach Moss, a Devin Singletary thing. It's this team doesn't know how to run the ball. And they haven't known how to run the ball since LaShawn McCoy left, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it again anytime soon. So, me personally, I'm all out on Buffalo running backs. Josh Allen, you're playing. Diggs is in for sure. Dawson Knox is a great tight end stream this week. He should be okay. Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley, I think they're okay flex spots. Sanders is really deep reach for me, but I do think that he's an okay flex spot. Cole Beasley, I think, is a wide receiver 3 flex option in this one, but I do think that he's going to get a fair amount of targets, like 6+ targets. So I'm, Beasley over Sanders, but I do think that if you're really desperate and there's nothing out there, Sanders is on a lot of waiver wires, and you could, maybe put him in there. So that is the Monday Night Football game. Now let us get into a little bonus section here for you guys. We're going to be talking about the daily fantasy section. I'll also be uploading some of this onto TikTok, so if you guys don't follow me there, check me out there. I'll be live on TikTok tonight and tomorrow morning for you guys. So let's talk about my daily fantasy picks for the week. Number 1, we got Derek Carr. He should be pretty affordable in daily fantasy. I like him in redraft as well. Washington's allowing the most points to the quarterback position, and I expect this to be a game where Derek Carr does feast. Myles Gaskin, running back. The Chargers are allowing a lot of points to running backs this season, and Tua trusts clearly just Waddle and Myles Gaskin. Expect Myles Gaskin to get quite a few passes in this game and quite a bit of work. My running back 2 is Tevin Coleman. We saw Tevin Coleman get the majority of the work last week, and this team clearly does miss Michael Carter. They need that bully back that they can give the ball to 15+ times a game, and I do think that's going to be Tevin Coleman this week. He gets a super easy matchup against Philly, who's allowing the 5th most points to running back, so I do think that in daily fantasy, Tevin Coleman is a great start. Wide receiver. Now this one's going to be a little bit more expensive and a little bit more obvious to some of you, but it's going to be Hunter Renfro. I don't think enough people are talking about Hunter Renfro, and I think out of everybody that we talked about today, Hunter Renfro has the most opportunity to finish as a wide receiver 1 on the week. So I do think that he has a potential to finish top 7, top 5. I love Hunter Renfro this week. I think he's an absolute fire up in daily fantasy. My wide receiver 2 on this is Van Jefferson. All the talk about OBJ and Van Jefferson, it was clearly Van Jefferson. He stays more consistent. I think Cup and Jefferson is a phrase that we say a lot next year and one that you're going to be hearing a lot this week. Juwan Jennings from San Francisco 49ers is my next wide receiver I want to talk about. A lot of people are high on Ayuk, and as much as I think that you can put Ayuk into your lineups, we're all hoping it happens with Ayuk, and now Juwan Jennings is getting his firm chance at a wide receiver 2 position. So I've already talked about it. With Deebo Samuel being out, I think it affects Kittle and Elijah Mitchell. It helps them more than it does Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's taken on the 1 role now. We've seen him struggle, and now he's probably going to get that 1 attention. I think Juwan Jennings is a super affordable, super sneaky start in daily fantasy that if you put in your MVP spot could return you some value that basically nobody else has in their MVP spot. Tight end, Pat Freiermuth, we talked about him already on the show. He has a great matchup. He should be getting at least 5, 6 plus targets. Red zone opportunity is there, and I like him. Now, my favorite daily fantasy player that I want to talk about today is Ryan Griffin, the tight end for the Jets. And I know this is a weird one. I know this is a gross one, but that's why it's the best one, because nobody's going to be playing Ryan Griffin in daily fantasy. Nobody's going to be playing Ryan Griffin in their MVP spot in fantasy. Or daily fantasy, and that's what gives you the edge, is when you're playing a player that nobody else has and they go off, you're far ahead above everybody else. So let's get a tight end into the MVP spot and let it be Ryan Griffin, and let me tell you why. Ryan Griffin, it seems gross, but he is the only tight end on the Jets depth chart, and he's playing against an absolutely awful Philly secondary that is allowing the most points to tight end, and it is by far. They're allowing 30 points more on the season to the tight end position than any other team, and it's not even like they've played really great tight ends. They have allowed double-digit points to the tight end position group every single week this year. So the Philadelphia Eagles are bleeding points to the tight end position. Zach Wilson, if he leans on Ryan Griffin, he had 4 targets last week, caught all 4 of them. If Ryan Griffin gets really integrated into this game, gets the targets, he might feast on Philly. Everybody, as you can hear, I am losing my voice, but that is okay because we have come to the end of the show. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to Fantasy Daily, the game breakdown episode on this Saturday. Check me out on TikTok. I'll be live tonight. I'll be live tomorrow morning before the game start. Check out all my socials below, the Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. And I will see you tonight, maybe on TikTok if you're there. I'll see you there.